So this video is going to be about how to date a map. So if you're in the first decade of the 20th century, one of the first things you'll notice is Transvaal and the Orange Free State, because these were incorporated into the Union of South Africa, or just in general the British colonial holdings in the area, in 1902 after they lost the Second Boer War. And eventually they went on to join the Union of South Africa in 1910. And this was independent from Britain and lasted all the way up until 1961. But yeah, you're not going to see all these little colonies here combined until 1910, but those really stop in 1902. Another key thing you'll notice is Bosnia, just right about here. It was taken over the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And this is what really made the Serbs so mad and led to those nationalists being willing to assassinate him. And it was ridiculous because how many bombs they threw, but eventually they managed. And what's interesting is 3 of them had tuberculosis, which I did not know until recently. 3 of the assassins, yeah. So this is going to be 1910s to 1920s, because they're kind of grouped together. Because in 1918 a ton of countries got their independence, such as Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland. All these countries kind of became their own thing. But some of them only really became independent in 1920s, like the Baltic states right here. They only fully established themselves in the 1920s because they had to fight off some not so nice neighbors. You also had the Caucasus states break off before being retaken over by the Soviet Union now, and that being Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. And they were all independent in 1918 and retaken in 1920. Forcibly turned into Transcaucasian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, which lasted from 1922 to 1936. Communist, long boring name, yay! There's also Czechoslovakia, which you didn't see before World War II, and that was broken up in World War I, my bad. And you didn't see it broken up to World War II. That's not as important as the last thing. So Turkey is new. This is in 1923, and you didn't really have Turkey before this because it was the Ottoman Empire. And so that's why Armenia has such a big border before the USSR comes down, and Turkey pushes them out while the USSR is like, hey, you need to F off and chill out. And that's what they did. And this whole time, Turkey had just come out of fighting with Greece, and that's the Greco-Turkic Wars. And Armenia has not been negotiated away with Turkey between Russia yet, or the USSR, whatever you want to call it, really. In the 1930s, well, it's already happened here, in earlier 1938, Germany annexes Austria. But it'd be later, they took this part of Czechoslovakia, calling it the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. And they took this part, and they broke up Czechoslovakia, and this part just became Slovakia. It was a Slovak state, and it was a client state of Nazi Germany. Now, it was September 1st, 1939, 1 a.m. that they started their invasion of Poland, but it was later aided by the Soviets after a month in, and they just came in on both sides and took it over. And that's major changes in the map in the 1930s. So a lot of things changed after World War II. To start with, Jordan changed its name from Transjordan to regular Jordan. That was a bit after the war in 1949, but it's still interesting. Korea in 1945 was split into between North and South, between Soviet influence and U.S. influence. After defeating the Japanese, this trust territory was established, and that lasted from 1947 until 1994. Something else that happened in 1949 was that Newfoundland went from the UK to Canada. There's also the break of Pakistan from India in 1947, as both gained independence from how hard they fought in World War II. Czechoslovakia reemerges, Poland reemerges, and then East Prussia, formerly an exclave of Germany, is fully absorbed in the Soviet Union. That was in 1945. It was 1940 that all the Baltic states were absorbed in the Soviet Union fully. And there's also in World War II you saw slight border changes between Finland and the USSR. In the 1950s, particularly 1951, Tibet is incorporated into China. In 1954, North and South Vietnam split. And a final note of consideration is that in 1959, Hawaii went from being an independent country to part of the U.S., and it's over here somewhere. Although I forgot to mention it earlier, this is supposed to be like a short overview. You're supposed to be able to find like one or two things in each decade, because this is the simplified version. Anyway, Zambia changed its name from Northern Rhodesia to Zambia in 1964. And that's something noticeable because it's a long name, it's something nice and interesting. In the 1970s, you saw more than you'd expect. So for starters, the DRC, or Democratic Republic of the Congo, this massive thing the size of Western Europe, changed its name to Zaire. In this same decade, you also saw Bangladesh become what it is today, instead of just East Pakistan. And Vietnam reunited, which was in 1972. And a final note is that from Trucial Oman, right through here, the UAE was formed, which it used to, there was nothing dividing them. It's just big, like one giant Oman. It was Trucial Oman. That was it. So yeah, the UAE was formed, and along with Qatar and Bahrain. In this decade overview, the only real thing I found in the 1980s was Zimbabwe, changing its name from Rhodesia, or Southern Rhodesia, into just Zimbabwe. It probably would have been Rhodesia due to Northern Rhodesia no longer being really a thing with a different name. So yeah, changed from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe. And that was in 1980. So 1990s are extremely chaotic. So 1989, 1990s. So first you had the unification of East and West Germany. You had the unification of North and South Yemen. You also had the breakup of the Soviet Union with Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, Belarus, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, all breaking off. And a final note is Kaliningrad became an exclave of Russia, because they still had won it from Germany way back when. And yeah, a final note, the Democratic Republic of the Congo changed its name back to that from Zaire in 1997. And the first two real changes, aside from the breakup of Yugoslavia, which I'll go into more detail in a second, that you'll notice in the 2000s, is East Timor breaking from Indonesia in 2001, or Timor-Leste, if I pronounced that right, sorry if I didn't. And then you also have South Sudan, which officially broke off in 2011. Okay, so the more recent breakup of states, or introduction of new countries, can't speak English obviously, was started with the Balkanization of Yugoslavia. So in 1991, Slovenia broke off, followed by Croatia in the same year, and then the FYROM, and then there was Bosnia. And that was, except Bosnia was in 1992. The remaining two being Montenegro and Serbia split apart in 2006. And they were together in this union that you could still see them up until 2006 when they did break apart. And a very, very recent change was in 2019 when this long name, because Greece is like Re, Macedonia is ours, is now North Macedonia. As a final note, between the end of 2018 and the start of 2019, Burundi's capital moved from Bujumbura, sorry if I mispronounced that, to Gitega. And that's just something I found interesting. And that's how you know if a map's brand new this year, as I'm talking.